Here in Manhattan, Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz just wrapped up their vice presidential debate, effectively getting the last word in this race for the White House before an audience this large. Unless, of course, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris agree to debate again before Election Day. Fingers crossed. We've made the invitation. Harris has accepted. Tonight's debate was civil. The question of how factual it was is another matter. Let's find out from our fact checker, Daniel Dale, what he thinks. Daniel?
Jake, it certainly wasn't a perfect debate from Governor Walz from a fact checker's perspective, but I think there was more inaccuracy from Senator Vance, and I think Vance had the two biggest whoppers of the night, both of them actually in what he left out rather than what he said. Listen to his claims about Trump's post-election behavior in 2020 and early 2021.
He said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. He peacefully gave over power on January the 20th.
This is a pretty wild rewriting of history. Trump peacefully gave over power on January the 20th. Sure, Trump did not lock himself in the Oval Office, but he left office after trying extremely hard to not give over power. We all know this. He tried to manipulate everyone from the American public to state elections officials, to state legislators, to the Justice Department, to his very own vice president. He helped trigger a deadly riot. And then Vance said Trump called for peaceful protest on January 6th. Yes, Trump did that once in that January 6th speech, after calling supporters to Washington with a promise it would be wild, spending weeks whipping them into a frenzy with lies about the election, Vice President Pence's non-existent power to overturn the result, and then in that same January 6th speech, using combative language far more often than that calming language, saying things like, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. When you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. You'll never take back our country with weakness, on and on. Now, let's turn to another egregious distortion of history from Senator Vance. This one on Obamacare.
When Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and health care costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care.
Casting Donald Trump as the savior of Obamacare, I think, is bananas. Donald Trump tried very hard to repeal Obamacare. The only reason it was not repealed in 2017 was because he barely couldn't find enough Republican votes in Congress. And then he tried to undermine Obamacare in various ways. He cut the open enrollment period in half. He slashed funding for advertising and for people who help other Americans sign up. He ended a key set of subsidies for insurers. His administration refused to defend some critical provisions of the law in court, instead arguing that they should indeed be invalidated. I could go on. So yes, Trump did keep operating the Obama exchanges. He didn't completely give up on it, but casting him as the savior of Obamacare, I think, Jake, is pretty dishonest.
Daniel, what stood out to you?
I think what most struck me, Anderson, was significant revisionist history from Senator Vance on the subject of Obamacare on January 6th. But I was also struck by the fact that we had a false claim from each candidate on the subject of reproductive rights. So first, let's listen to something that Governor Walz said about the conservative Heritage Foundation think tank's initiative known as Project 2025.
Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments.
This claim, which Governor Walz has made before, is false. Project 2025's 900-page policy document is online. You can read it. I've read it. Nothing in it proposes to make anyone register their pregnancy with the government. What Project 2025 does propose is that the federal government take steps to make sure it is getting from every state detailed after the fact anonymous data on abortion and miscarriage. The federal government already gets this data from almost every state on a voluntary basis. Project 2025 wants to make it mandatory for all states, but there's no pregnancy registration involved in this data collection today. Project 2025 doesn't propose to change that. And in fact, Tim Walz's own state of Minnesota already posts detailed after the fact anonymous abortion and miscarriage data online on the state health department website. There is no pregnancy registration in Minnesota, of course. And I should also note that while the governor referred to their Project 2025, it is not an initiative of the Trump-Vance campaign itself, though it is, of course, also true that Trump and Vance have extensive and close ties to it. Now I want to look at a claim that Senator Vance made on his past position on abortion.
Why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard.
This is false. Before Senator Vance joined the Trump campaign and fell behind Trump's professed desire for a state-by-state approach to abortion, Vance did support a national abortion ban. In 2022, when he ran for the U.S. Senate, he said it in an interview, and this is a direct quote, "I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally." No caveats there. He added that he was, quote, sympathetic to the view that a national ban was necessary to stop women from traveling across state lines to obtain abortions. And he also said in his website during that Senate campaign that he was, quote, 100% pro-life, end quote, and that he favored eliminating abortion. These categorical words were on his website until Trump chose him as his running mate. They certainly included no caveats about opposing a federal legislation. And then in the Senate, as recently as late last year, he explicitly pushed a national ban as early as 15 weeks gestation. As a debate moderator said to him, he can try to spin that as just a standard, but it's not like a goal or a target. That was federal legislation, or the idea of it at least, that would have banned abortion at 15 weeks. And again, he was even more categorical, Anderson, before he was elected.